Vivian Cox Frazier. Deborah Smith Gregory.
She's outside, if there.
Ms. Frazier is here? Oh no, Ms. Gregory is right here.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Smith Gregory, and I am a Newark resident. And I do want to speak on behalf of our community, because what I experienced outside was really, 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 really bad and pitiful. It really was. You had small Boy Scouts out there, you had mothers with babies out there, you had parents out there, you had community activists. Some people did manage to get in, but you have to do better. You have to do better. The superintendent has stated that there have been over 100 meetings in the community. 100 community meetings, but what I saw outside, the notion of radical reform has fostered radical disrespect of our community, and it's really bad. And the misunderstanding or the confusion with Mount Vernon is evidence that meetings are not being had. What is going on? It's Mount Vernon, it's Abington, it's Sussex, it's Science Park, it's Chancellor Annex, it's Camden, it's Martin Luther King. It's this blanket autonomous decision that's made in a vacuum that is not working. It's not working. It's not working. And this charter school parents and the public school parents being pitted against each other, it's a really sad situation in our district, and something really needs to be done about it. But I digress. My specific questions, I just had to say that because it was really bad out there. What is the status of the school-based report cards that were to be produced as a result of the audit that was conducted by the Parthenon Group? At the December 2011 business meeting, there was such an urgency to get that project started before Christmas break that the advisory board was pressed to forego voting at a public meeting and vote at the business meeting. So I'm just trying to figure out what is the status of that. And with that in mind, I would request from the advisory board of public accounting of every consultant and company that is paid $50,000 and above, what is the role, responsibility, authority, salary, and the lead person? Is this consultant being paid by private gifts, grants, or from the NPS budget? And since they're racial, now 50%, this is what the superintendent has said, 50% of the families are not online. We need to have community forums where all of the test scores are given out by a national comparison, a state comparison, and a school by school. We need to see that. We need to own it. The entire community needs to own the good, the bad, the ugly. And finally, and I am going to wrap up, since we get the racial breakdown, but we're not getting the by school breakdown, I would like to address the Science Park co-location proposal as one of the highest performing high schools in the district. If it does not reflect the diversity of the community, then have the school accept the students that will reflect that. But the school has already taken on a middle school. It's working to strengthen that program. It's embarking on an IB program. It's working to work on a science program. It does not need co-location as a distraction.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Thank you. Maureen Robinson.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Robinson, Elizabeth, New Jersey, highly qualified special education teacher, Newark School District. For the past several years, I have been a community activist and advocate for students and teachers, speaking about the corruption, discrimination, cronyism, disparate treatment. Some of the chickens have finally come to roost and have vindicated and validated some of my concerns. I have submitted a scathing report to Advisory Board Member Marquise Lewis from the Special Education Investigative Unit of the Department of Education regarding Westside High School. I am submitting a copy of the report to President Baskerville tonight. I am well aware that this advisory board has no power, that this is a state-owned and operated school district with an approximate $1 billion budget, and the governor and Cory Booker is not about to allow you to control all that money. On the issue of racism and discrimination, I learned that no schools in the North Ward where there's a predominance of Hispanic, Portuguese, Brazilian, and or white students, teachers, and administrators are being closed, where there were also serious allegations in the media about alleged cheating in several of the schools in that ward. It was reported that 6 teachers at Eastside High School have been removed, 5 blacks and 1 white. There has been a covert and overt purging of senior citizens working in the district. I have the names of a number of senior citizens who, according to them, either are being forced into retirement or have been forced to resign. That's against federal and state laws regarding discrimination. There also appears to be a blatant and arrogant disregard for the federal, state, and district laws regarding nepotism. At this juncture, I'm not going to disclose the allegations that have been disclosed to me and the group that I'm working with regarding how deeply entrenched nepotism is in the district. There's a city council meeting tomorrow night. I admonish you, the public, to voice your concerns therein, where they will be televised so the residents of Newark can be made aware of what's going on in the district and your city.
Thank you. Keith Burnham, Mohammed Kamara, Marcia Cardoso, Tomasa Campos, Rosanna Velez, Vanetta Richmond, Nelly Acevedo, Corey Olumbe, Jabari Olumbe, Wanda Coelho, Anari Arman, Lauren Deschamps, Carmen Sanchez, Maria Hernandez, Janet Davis, Ruth Brooks, Carol James, Amanda Pecor.
I'm right here. Sorry. My name is Amanda Pecor, and I live at 39 Pacific Street here in Newark. I am addressing you tonight because I believe the current NPS administration does not understand, respect, or appreciate the leadership role that students took in securing the current Science Park High School facility. The students and staff of Science High School struggled for more than 30 years with a school building that was dilapidated, unsanitary, and overcrowded. As far back as the early 1980s, entering freshmen were being told that they would have a new building before they graduated. Clearly, these promises went unfulfilled. It was only when the students themselves began to organize, protest, and demand a new building that any progress was made. Science High is and always has been a very diverse school in a deeply segregated city. Its students represent all the neighborhoods of Newark, and they all worked together to pressure the politicians and bureaucrats of this city and this state to provide them with an adequate school building. The fact that the students of Science High were ready, willing, and able to organize themselves and advocate for themselves in this way says more about the caliber of those students and that school than any standardized test scores ever could. In the spring of 2003, science students staged a massive walkout during which they took their demands to Cedar Street and City Hall. It was only in the wake of this act of civil disobedience that the students' voices were finally heard and construction on the new building was finally begun. When that construction ground to a halt in the spring of 2006, the only thing standing on the site of the current building was a framework of girders. It took a second, even more massive, and again, student-organized, student-led walkout and protest to get construction started once more. Thus, Science Park High School is not some generous gift that NPS bestowed upon a privileged group of students. Rather, it is a wonderful resource that those students wrested from the state by dint of their own efforts. If the current administration of NPS would like to start a new school, I suggest that it give that school its own building. Certainly, it has closed enough schools to have plenty of empty buildings on hand. Any proposal to deny current Science Park High School students access to any part of the hard-won facility at 260 Norfolk Street betrays ignorance of their history, disdain for their struggle, and contempt for their achievement.
Luz Chavez, Sebastian Ferreira, Rafaela Made, Rosanna Santos, Cherry L. Pringle Khalif, Cecilia Ola, Erica Roberts, Cheryl Bell, Novella Gray Britton, Kafile Sinone Grant, Dwayne Dawson, Rita Barber, Angel Sagway, Coral Wickham, Jabril Miller, Diana Farris, Sadia Kofa, Adriana Lima, Maria Say, Maria Peruniela, I hope I said it right, Pablo Oliveira, Peter Wang, Polavero, who is here? No? Okay. Akil Buchanan. Achille Buchanan.
You know who I am. Come on now, Tony.
Absolutely, I do know who you are. I was reading from the paper. I do know your name.
No problem, no problem. All power to the people. I'm Achille Buchanan, new caucus member and educated in Newark's public schools. I also teach at Science Park High. I want to address the proposed co-location for Science Park High and the power of definition. Cammie, Cory Booker called you a, quote, modern-day freedom fighter, unquote, because you are, quote, working in the educational trenches to liberate our country from delusions, unquote. But the people of Newark here don't have any delusions. We define you differently, that's all. Rather than a freedom fighter, we see you as a minion for a new American slave system. You work for billionaires like Bloomberg and the Koch brothers and politicians like Christie and Corey, all dedicated, all committed to the destruction of public education. And you want our school system run by corporations for profit. Newark residents call you a corporate overseer, and your co-location plan for Science Park High illustrates this point. What legitimate educational reason could there be for cramming children into classrooms like slaves crammed into slave ships so that a carpetbagging New York-based charter school can siphon off classrooms and dollars from the academically successful Science Park High. There is no legitimate reason. Booker says you fight for freedom and choice, but at last week's board meeting, you admitted that the ultimate decision of which magnet schools students will be assigned to in the fall rests not with students or their parents, but with you, Cammie, and not the people. That's not freedom, that's not choice, and that's not self-determination. That is 21st century educational slavery that rips to shreds America's long-held social contract with its children, in which the state and the corporation conspire and dictate where they will go to school. Also at last week's board meeting, you said that the decision to place Eagle Academy at Science Park was not finalized, not a done deal. But weeks before, we at Science Park were told that the co-location was final. So final, rumor has it that furniture for the Eagle Academy was shipped to Science Park and stored in its basement. Have we redefined final too? We reject this deception of redefinition. We're not stupid nor easily manipulated. We reject the corporatist educational slavery of the 21st century disguised as choice. We want real choice. Parents should decide the schools students attend, not overseers. No matter what you call it, no matter how you redefine it, we oppose co-location. We will fight for our public schools, for we are the real freedom fighters. All power to the people. Whose schools? Whose schools? Whose schools? Whose schools?
Robin Dawson. Alberto Ventura. Heather Stewart. Claudia Saitano. Errol Chambers. Roberto Pinheiro. Joanna Mendonca. Yvonne Jackson. Marcos de Freitas. Clara Salas. Brenda Cordero. Abiodun Dixon. Aruse Kehinde. Paula Gafana. Elvia Fernandez. Shakira Holmes. Fernando Lavin. Shakira Phipps. Maria Lasso. Anna Alberto. Francois Gutierrez. Dionisio Van Heiningen. Nora Rosas. Rosette Muba. Mercy Ordonez. Michelina Pugliese. I know that name. Alice Simon. Cleveland Simon. David Pinheiro. Renia Martinez. Beatrice Flores. Dr. Elizabeth Achebe. Jacqueline Bostic Calder.
My name is Jacqueline Bostic Calder, and I am a Newark resident, and today I lost my sister. So I needed to come here because I asked for an investigation at, first of all, I grew up in a Christian home. And in the home and in church, the pastor always said, if the head's not right, then the body and the tail ain't right. And it's in the Bible. And the head is not right here. So therefore, the body's not right. I asked for you to investigate Westside High School and its principals and the things that's going on in Westside. I also asked you to void the recommendations that that principal gave the employees there. You don't have to like me. I don't care if you don't like me, but you have to work with me. They're there to take care of the students, not to be bullied from your autonomy that you have these principals over to bully. Westside principal the school is being investigated with special ed. There's a letter going around, a package. I do have it in my car. And you know this. You had people, an envelope was given to you. You wouldn't read it because people wouldn't sign it. I wouldn't put my name on it to get the repercussions. And most of them that she gave bad reports on, they didn't want her. She wasn't a choice for the principal at Westside. You chose her over them. Of course, she's a Teach for America. I would look after mine because Deltas look after their people, AKAs look after theirs. But if she's not right, if your people are not right, they shouldn't be here. You want to get rid of, yes, I know we have bad teachers. We have bad principals, and we have bad administrations. But you don't try to hurt these young people that just got out of school, that worked hard. My child worked hard. I worked hard. I didn't send her to no damn charter school, excuse me, because I get upset. I didn't send her to a charter school. I worked hard for my child. I had choices, either public school or private school. I worked hard for my kids. That one has 4 degrees, 2 masters and 2 bachelors. Because she was on that SLC, she decided she don't like her. You need to come back, because she's not a dummy. So I'm hoping you go back in there and investigate, and the bad reports that this principal and her cronies wrote on these people, I hope you take it and reinvestigate it. No vote, no confidence. Because she needs to go. She needs to go. Anytime children were spraying, spraying, and things happen in that school and you still sitting here, y'all need to investigate. And y'all know what's going on.
Thank you. Pat Jones. Arlene Hunt. Lyndon Brown. Let me just say thank you, everyone, for your patience. The list was extremely long today, and we are here this long, and we will finish the list this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Lyndon Brown, 220 South 6th Street, Newark, President of the Essex County PTA. Once again, the Newark Public Schools has left this district in disarray. It's just a travesty what's going on in Newark Public Schools. At the end of the school year, we have teachers packing boxes, trying to do cue cards, report cards. Teachers and parents and students don't know where they're going to be next year, what school they're going to be at, who's going to be their principal, who's going to be their teacher, who's going to be the administrator. It's just a lot of chaos going on, and it's really, really pathetic. And we really, really have put our kids through a lot, and they really need to get things together so that our kids can start the new school year off on the right foot. I'm very displeased with the selection process for principals in this district, and some of these principals have not gone before SLCs. I think it's a disgrace that our principals have put together teams of teachers to interview new teachers for the district, putting teachers on a committee who have not been trained by the district, because the district trained SLCs for personnel, and we have principals putting non-tenured teachers who have gotten a basic in their evaluations, and they're actually interviewing new and upcoming teachers. That's a disgrace, and it needs to stop. And it's happening regularly. The instructional climate and culture in a lot of our schools is dismal. That's why we have so many retirements. That's why we have so many people taking sick leaves and family leaves. People are stressed out. And it's because of the autonomy that was given a lot of our principals without any type of parameters as to what you can and cannot do. There's no mentoring for these new administrators. You're putting them in these schools as principals in failing schools, and they have no experience. That's a disgrace. And to have 13th Avenue's principal come back to 13th Avenue School, where she's gotten so many teachers and parents who have been frustrated and disgusted with her leadership, it's a disgrace. Just today, parents got notices tonight that their kids have to be at the bus at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to D.C. It's going to be 97 degrees tomorrow, but 40% of the students have special needs, and they ride the school bus, and they cannot get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the parents should have been given more than a 6-hour notice. Yesterday, the kindergarten parents were given a notice. Graduation will be on Thursday at 9 a.m. It was scheduled for 1 o'clock until 2 days ago when parents are told North Star has to have their graduation, so you're going to have to move your graduation. We don't want to hear about the co-location working. It is not. 2 teachers in a classroom in North Star and 1 teacher in a classroom at 13th Avenue. Air conditioners in North Star, no air conditioners in the classrooms. Carpeting, there's no comparison. There's inequalities that are existing, and the co-location is not working. We want it to stop. The end of the year has been very stressful for our kids, and we need to see our school board members more visible in some of our low-performing schools, because a lot of the good teachers are being lumped with the bad teachers, and it's not fair. The talent search, talent match is not working. We don't look at the integrity of some of these hard-working individuals who go above and beyond the call of duty. It's not in their resume, the things that they do for these children. It's not there, and it needs to be considered. Maintenance termination is needed in some of our schools, and particularly at Speedway. I told you there were ants and centipedes all in those classrooms in that playground, and the kids are still complaining, and they cannot learn because they're constantly stepping on bugs. We need exterminators out there immediately.
Mr. Brown, I appreciate your comments very much, but we want to get through the list and the other speakers who are waiting. Thank you very much.
Last week. And they
Janice
didn't find
Reedus.
anything. They put on new traps and stuff though, but I sent somebody.
Cassandra Bowles. Wilhelmina Holder.
I'm just so tired now. This is really ridiculous. I can't even read my own writing. But it's a good thing I'm closely aligned with what's going on here. I want to say to the superintendent, it's an absolute disgrace what happened. I echo Deborah Smith-Gregory 100,000%. What happened outside? You had to know with 198 people signed up to speak that you were going to have an overcapacity crowd. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for not opening the cafeteria and provide sight and sound there. We do that in church on Sundays. We have sight and sound in the chapel. We have sight and sound in the fellowship hall. We have it in the auditorium because we know certain Sundays there are capacity crowds. In other words, we plan for things and we respect the people. And that's the biggest problem we have. There is no respect for this community, and it has to come from you. If the head stinks, you know what the rest is. I want to talk about the questions that you have not provided to Secondary Parent Council about the instructional and non-instructional staff and the number of people who will be working here and what will school look like for my grandchildren. I'd like to get the answers to that, Ms. Superintendent. We want to know about the number of people who will be here, who they are in terms of experience, their ethnicity, their gender, where they'll be teaching, and what their expertise is. We like to have this information before August 1. The other thing that we require of you, and of course if the consultants have to give it to us, let us know who the consultants are and we will ask them for it. Because I understand you don't have staff that do that, you hire consultants. The other issue is we do not wish, and board, please pay attention, do not vote for charter schools to have 7-year leases. especially since we don't know their capacity to teach. We cannot give away our buildings to people on an experiment with our children, because growth is coming to Newark. And in that instance, if we gave away the buildings for at least 7 years and have 7 years of repeated failure, we have nowhere to go as a community. So please, do not table it, just vote no. That's the decent thing to do. We cannot expect that the superintendent will lead that force, because she did not testify in Jersey City for local control as the other superintendents did, and I have your testimony. And there was no mention, as previous superintendents who really support the community said, we'd like to have local control and we need additional funding. So there's some issues with these consultants that come in here. There's an issue with this group that just came in here and they want to support Team Academy, and that's fine. If they have $25 million to support Team Academy, that's fine. But I need the superintendent to find money for the kids at Hawthorne Avenue to excel. I need the superintendent to find money for the kids at L.A. Spencer to excel. We need money. We need you to be the leader, instructional and otherwise, for this community. But really, community, I need you to sign up with us, because we're going to be meeting and drawing our own plan, because the truth of the matter is we can trust no one at this point. We must do this ourselves. These are our schools, these are our children, they're my grandchildren, and we need to come together. Do not let that charter versus non-charter school thing fool you, because the charter kids are failing as well.
Thank you very much for your comments. We have other people waiting to speak,
Ms. Holder, your time has expired.
I understand. I sat here all night and I listened to everyone else speak.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Holder. Thank you for your statement. Ms. Holder.
Join us in the back.
Ms. Holder.
Mark Knight, Asamad Harvell, Anna Sagway, Melissa Hernandez, Michael Yorvino, Jason Hopkins, is he here? Mr. Buchanan, your name is listed twice. You already spoke. Hafiza Abdullah.
Thank you. Hi, Hafiza Abdullah. I used to be a teacher at Eastside High School, and now I'm an environmental science teacher without a position. I didn't know that science was no longer necessary, but it's Newark. So, here we go. This administration prides itself on diversity. However, I think that this district just does that when there's a photo opportunity. We claim diversity is good for culture and for education. However, this regime has turned a blind eye to the disproportionate elimination of positions of African American women educators. Thank you. I've listened and watched as the leadership at Eastside High School shifts the standards for African American women. African American teachers comprise 15% of the entire faculty at Eastside High School. However, 85% of the positions that have been eliminated at Eastside High School has been African American women.
Oh, well.
I don't know if that makes, well, that's a little disproportionate to me. The supposed budget cuts that prompted our position cuts are a subterfuge. The failure of this administration to investigate and to penalize the flagrant discrimination makes clear your position on discriminatory practices, Cami Anderson. You ignore the SLC interviewers' observations and their recommendations for principals and for the leaderships for their school. It is clear that African American women do not belong at Eastside High School. It then begs the question, how do you feel about African American women teaching in your district? If teachers are required to be highly qualified, then what can we expect of our leadership? I listened to the language of your administration, how you equate lower standards with accepting or including more black students. You equate firing black teachers, well, you use the terms firing black teachers in order to attract highly qualified teachers, equating black teachers and black students with poor quality. Your message is clear, Cami Anderson, but we want our message to be clear. We know our rights, and we know that this is flagrant, blatant discrimination. You will respect us either because you want to or because federal law demands it. I invite you to meet with us and discuss the practices of your administration and of your leadership. Thank you.
Women hold up half the sky.
Brian Holman.
My name is Brian Holman. I'm a proud Newark resident. I'm also a history teacher at American History High and a member of the New Caucus. New Caucus urges this board to actively fight against the redefinition of poverty in Trenton because we know that Surf and Christie are not going to give up their effort to defund Newark easily. Right? We commend you at the same time. It's a valiant effort, but we have to do more. All right, as we heard, Chris Surf and Chris Christie are attempting to reduce school funding for children in poverty. Cami Anderson and Cory Booker have tacitly supported this conservative idea. Over time, this redefinition means struggling comprehensive schools will face closure and possible charterization. These axe-happy budget slashers are being condoned by local and national teachers union leaders Joe Del Grasso and Randy Weingarten by their refusal to clearly oppose this open disregard for children in poverty. Worse, neither Del Grasso nor Weingarten are courageous enough to put forth social justice-based alternatives to the slash and burn policies of Surf and Christie, because, like almost all liberal politicians today, they are politically bankrupt. Together, these city, state, and labor leaders are not working in the interests of families struggling in poverty and the Newark community in general. But don't take my word for it. Surprisingly, even former Newark Superintendent Clifford Janey pointed out last week that as poverty and economic inequality has increased to record highs, education reformers have either ignored this reality or they've refused to propose real solutions. Equal educational opportunities cannot exist among rich and poor students, Janey suggests, unless there are more equal conditions both inside schools and outside them in society. For those who grow up on the floor of poverty, there are struggles that richer students in the suburbs simply do not face: malnutrition and hunger, lack of health care, constant fear of violence, and unstable living situations. Janey now recognizes that quality teachers and great school leaders cannot heroically overcome these conditions alone. He warns, quote, "The denial of social economic consequences will only shatter more students' dreams," unquote. The board and Ms. Anderson need to heed this warning. Your legacies in Newark depend on it. The bottom line is this: the governing elites in Newark and Trenton no longer want to spend public money on children in poverty. In Washington, politicians would rather spend billions on wars abroad than on a war against poverty and educational injustice at home. If these trends continue, the results will be disastrous, especially for families in urban areas who live on the floor of poverty. The social contract that says education is a right will be ripped up and replaced with a corporate contract that says education is a commodity, to be sold for the profit of a wealthy few. Our children will be subjected to a national curriculum and a battery of standardized tests, which will train some students for college so they may work high-skill, high-tech jobs that big corporations demand. But many students will be placed on a track towards low-wage, low-skill work within the service industry, keeping yet another generation pinned down on the floor of poverty. Those who fit neither track will be encouraged to join the military to fight future wars in the defense of the American homeland. Is this the kind of future we want for our children? Absolutely not. We need students, parents, community members, and education workers to come together to
Mr. Holman. Mr. Holman, please finish your sentence. We have other speakers waiting.
The NTU needs to play a more proactive
Mr.
role
Holman,
in the struggle to save and fix public
we have
schools.
other, okay, thank you.
We demand social and educational justice now.
Brandon Rippey. Brandon Rippey. Leah Owens. Oh, Brandon, okay.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Rippey, history teacher at Science Park High School and vice chairperson of the Newark Education Workers Caucus. Picking up where Brian left off, In recent years, we've heard many education reform buzzwords: accountability, merit, marketplace, competition, and choice. We actually hear principals called CEOs, as if they were heads of a corporation. We hear these corporate buzzwords so often because the ideas of education reform were created and financed by corporate interests. One example of this comes from the Bradley Foundation of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Funded by over $600 million in corporate money, the Bradley Foundation has spent tens of millions to convince us that teachers' unions are the problem, parents should be given choice, and education should be competitive like in the free market. I should point out that this foundation was the first corporate interest to fund and finance Cory Booker. Another example is the Broad Foundation. Founded by billionaire real estate developer Eli Broad.
Please address the board.
It spent hundreds of millions of dollars funding this corporate reform agenda and training future school superintendents, many of whom come from the business world without ever teaching in a classroom. There are others as well. The Gates Foundation of Bill Gates, obviously, the Walton Foundation of Walmart, the Koch brothers of Koch Industries, and of course, Mark Zuckerberg. Then there's people like David Tepper here in New Jersey, a billionaire hedge fund manager. He's currently spending millions of dollars blaming teachers' unions and supporting Chris Christie's plans for vouchers in charter schools. Most of these people and their foundations fund both the Democrat and Republican Party. They like dictatorial control without real boards of education that can say no to their plans. And yes, they all support Governor Christie, Commissioner of Education Cerf, Mayor Cory Booker, and some of the people on the stage tonight. My point is obvious. A tiny group of millionaires and billionaires have used their money to convince many well-meaning people and people who want good educations for their kids that teachers' unions are the problem, schools should work like businesses, and parents should have a choice of where to send their children. They believe that the free market and choice are the answers to everything and that anything public is bad. They act as if they're experts, yet to my knowledge, none of those I just mentioned have ever worked in a school. Their major goals are simple: destroy public employees' unions, which are the last barrier protecting the working class from impoverishment, and make public education a for-profit system where business districts compete to make money by luring parents to send their children to their schools. When public officials are supported and appointed by these wealthy and powerful groups, we know that they do not represent our best interest, but they do have hundreds of millions of dollars behind them and obviously can simply ignore these speeches we give. We ask those of you on the board who do care about students, public education, and society to stand up to these appointed officials first by voting down the proposed charter school leases that are coming up in the next week or two. And second, for those of us in the audience, we
Mr.
must
Rippey,
unite
please
and
finish up. We appreciate your comments, but we have other
organize.
speakers waiting.
The new caucus stands in solidarity against these corporate attacks and for
Mr.
social
Rippey, please
justice
finish.
in our society. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Leah Owens. Leah Owens.
Leah Owens, English teacher at Central High School and chair of the Newark Education Workers Caucus. Ballot for a district. Control you took in '95 from the community with no clear plan to give it back, no end in sight to see. A bold new superintendent had us reach for the ring. A champion of the people here, Newark began rising. Then time came for her to step down, a replacement to be found. Hundreds flocked to come and voice their thoughts, soon only to be clowned. For our hefty governor declared 2 years is long enough. Forget your great expectations. Don't like it, that's too tough. Behind closed doors, a search was done, back to square one it seemed, but then a secret plan was leaked and outrage took the scene. This time his minion was sent forth, close this school and that one. Destroy all these communities, barked as though he had a gun. And so the tyranny began, disguised as parent choice. When will it become clear that all we want is a strong voice? Up to the podium we come and yell and beg and scream. We fight for every child's future, our legacy, their dream. You fax in people's names to speak, NPS parents locked out. Sit down and listen close to us to know what it's about. Teachers fired left and right, but neither RIF nor Pink Slip can deny the passion we have, even on a slave ship. All the way to Cedar Street, employees get the blame. Consultants collect on their fees. So sad, have you no shame? And now our building's up for lease. You promised market price. We'll get them back in just 3 decades. Don't hand us any dice. All these attacks on public ed only bring us closer. Sticks nor stones will break our bones. You best get a bulldozer. Let our collective voices rise because we are no fools, and take the streets both day and night as we yell out, whose schools? Our schools! Whose schools?
Johnny Latner. Sharon Smith. Laura Baker.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Laura Baker, 39 Montrose Street, Newark, New Jersey. In response to my open request for a copy of the feasibility study purportedly done for Martin Luther King Elementary School, I was given copies of a lot of documents, but I won't read what they were. However, the documents failed to show how this administration would improve the educational outcomes for the students. And it also failed to address the future growth of Newark Public Schools. Although it recommended the closing of Martin Luther King School without a feasibility study and/or implementation of the school improvement grant turnaround model that was signed by the interim superintendent, Deborah Terrell, on April 26, 2011. It is therefore our recommendation, Secondary Parent Council, in support of Martin Luther King School, that the turnaround model be implemented and the same plan to bus the students from Dayton Street community be implemented for Martin Luther King community, thus increasing the enrollment as needed. Leases and sale of school buildings. We requested a copy of the lease agreement for Martin Luther King School and the date of approval by the advisory board. To date, we have not received that information. We also requested and imposed the lease and the sale of our schools without input from the stakeholders in the city of Newark, who continue to suffer from SDA's failure to complete new schools for Newark students. Secondly, Central High School was built on less than 10 acres of land when the state minimum standard is 13 acres, inclusive of the land designated for Central High School outdoor facilities now occupied by Nat Turner Park. It is therefore our contention that 18th Avenue School land site be deeded to Central High School to complete the 13 acres of land in accordance with the state regulations. As you are aware, we were landlocked between Rutgers and NJIT University for years, and they tormented our kids for years, and we will not be landlocked again. We will not. I am serious. This will not happen again. We are therefore requesting a feasibility study of all our schools with emphasis on Central High School before any action is taken to lease or sell our school buildings. And that in the schools, I'm running fast. The guidelines used for the selection, we asked for information. We don't have that. We still want science. We want the test scores. We want the students number 1 through 100 and the feeder schools for all the kids that were selected and the 100 kids that was denied entrance into Science Park. A list of the proposed co-location schools for 2013. Budgets, we cannot afford to cut our school budgets, thus depriving public school students of the resources they need to close the achievement gap. Thank you very much for listening. I will email you my corrected copy, and I'm also asking for an investigation of this board because I believe this administration has purposely and by design are testing and closing our schools. And I will write a letter to Washington, Trenton, and wherever I have to write to because I believe there are some illegal activities taking place. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Outing. Mr. Ocasio, I don't have a first name. And Mr. Velez, no first name. And Jay Santiago. Lucius Jones. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Jones.
Lucius Jones, Vice President of my home. And that bourbon steak looks really good at Applebee's right now. I like to say basically we really heard a lot, Ms. Anderson, tonight, board members. And I think it doesn't allow me to, I don't want to come up here and just repeat what has already been said to the board over and over and over again. Of course, my concern is the authority of this board. Any other community where you get 5 indicators, 4 out of 5, you should then allow local control. You know, Ms. Anderson, it's also important that we understand that we don't miss the boat. You know, you got before the state board and we did order this transcript. And even though the HESPA scores are out and other districts talked about them, you didn't need to talk about it at the state board meeting. That is something that needs to be discussed at the state board meeting and in the community. It's a reflection of the results of this district. I would like to, you know, when I look back and see a couple of months from now that the test scores for my child's school for 6th, 7th, and 8th is out and the district has not talked about it, then how are we measuring ourselves? You know, it's important that we sit here and we talk about charter, public. You know, I attended my nephew's graduation at Unity Charter in Morristown. I went, as I rode up Route 24 and went into Morristown, my driver told me the school was behind a BMW dealer in a corporate office building. And they talked a lot about, in this graduation, about a community. And all I can see, and I don't mean this literally, that it was a BMW dealer with a driving, where you can drive around in circles to test the cars. Where was the community? There was no community. And this is what neighborhood schools mean to me. A young man who was bused to every school he's been in since he was in 1st grade. That's why I was bused out of the community, because of my vision. I say to Ms. Anderson that it's important that we listen to the people in the community. No one wants a failing school. But when we look at the fact and we say the culprits of these failing schools are the state. The state has came in here and they're making the decision. See, Marion Bolden took off the title State District Superintendent and she put on the title Superintendent. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a superintendent who believes in us, that believes in what we can do. We're also looking for, you know, when we talk about charter schools or public schools, but they're not Newark public schools. And then when you sit there and you see board members that say they are sitting there as members of the Newark public schools and demising the very reason why they sit there in the first place, if I can't get voted onto your charter school board, why should you be voted onto my charter school board? It's a conflict of interest. A major, major conflict of interest. So you could say that charter schools are public schools, but they're not Newark public school charter schools. So if we're going to have charter schools, let's have schools that Newark can compete with. My issue is that I think, again, that I am really, really torn after watching meeting after meeting after meeting. This isn't working. Not working for me, sitting here to 12 o'clock at night, and then tomorrow the nonsense starts again. I said at the last meeting, what are you going to do to stop this from happening in August, September, October, November? Are you going to sit down in the community and build collaboration? Or you say, you know what, we have a plan, we're going to execute this plan, we're going to execute this plan, regardless of what anyone says. That's not the right approach. I think that the residents of this city need to have a superintendent who understands and willing to work with them to make a difference for kids. That's important. That's the underlying important. But I also think that, as Shavar says, we want to make sure every kid has the ability and the opportunity to go to college. We got kids leaving charter schools and public schools that get to the 11th and 12th grade and can't afford to stay in there. Nobody's addressing that. So the issue that we have to get down to is whether or not whoever is speaking to you, is it what you're going to implement working for you, and is it working for us? I know you're tired of coming here and sitting here to 12 o'clock at night, because I'm tired of sitting here every night to 12 o'clock at night. But the change has to start with the superintendent. You have to do something different. You must go back and tell Corey, we got to do something different. We got to do something different. You got to tell the governor, he says he's giving you a lot of autonomy. A lot of autonomy. okay? You don't have to be Chris Christie's wife, you know, his style. I'm talking his style. Kick butt, ask questions later. You don't have to be that. You can come here and be gentle and calm, and we'll get more done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Jonathan Alston. And thank you for your patience.
Oh, thank you. I'm a Newark public school teacher. I teach at Science Park High School. I'm also a Newark resident. I went to Mount Vernon Elementary School. I also went to Science High School. I graduated from Yale University. I came back to teach and coach debate. I've taught for about, close to 20 years now. Please stop causing the division that you're causing within our public schools. Science Park High School, we're a good school. We're trying to be a great school. Co-location will not work for our school. There are things that we want to do with our school. Our staff, our students, our parents clearly do not want it. I've been listening, and clearly this is a theme. People think that the decisions that you're making are hurting good programs. That's a problem. When you have so many good teachers, dedicated teachers, hardworking teachers who dedicated their life to teaching, not trust you, that's a problem that you have that you should fix. I heard that we're giving 25 or 30-year leases to schools. If that's true, don't do that. That's horrible. That's something, again, that makes people not trust our district. We're a state-controlled district. Giving away long-term leases for things that don't have public support seems to undermine what we teach. We teach democracy. This isn't it. When you're selling public buildings like the city was trying to sell our water supply before, it has the feeling of like giving away land for blankets. Our history teachers know a lot about that. Finally, all superintendents of Newark Public Schools, when they were hired by the state, had to make the decision of whether they would work for the state or work for the people of Newark. Marion Boland had to make that decision. Janie had to make that decision. You have to make that decision. And it seems like, it appears like that you're more concerned with the state and the governor than what people in Newark are doing. And finally, I think there's some time left. I would just like to say for our charter school parents, I support you, love you, you are important to us. But charter schools are not public schools. They are publicly funded private institutions. I love my teaching job. I would never teach at a charter school because I love being a member of the union and the things that it makes for a teaching life. And I am a hardworking teacher, and I am very good at what I do, but I would never work for a charter school. So that's something that you should think about, especially when you're being pitted against the community and you're being used. Because when you come and speak for the charter school, you're speaking for, your policy is not made
Mr.
here.
Austin, please address the board. Thank you.
The policy is not made for charter schools, is not made by Cami Anderson or this board. It's made by the individuals, the private individuals in your charter school. This is a public meeting for the policies that are made here affect public schools, right? Your school got $6,000 or whatever amount of money they got. They said they got a charter because they said that they were able to educate your kids with that, not with what we're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Annette Austin. Is Dr. Pugliese still here? Okay, he would have been our last speaker. Ms. Austin? No, I'm sorry, I was...
It's me. Annette Alston, Newark Teachers Association president. But you know what? I'm just a teacher, a Newark school teacher with some brilliant students with different challenges. And one of my brilliant fourth grade students asked me today, if I could have any superpower in the world, I want it. What superpower would I want? They're brilliant. My reply was that I would want to be the teacher who made every student, no matter how low they came in my classroom, an honor roll student. A couple of my students retorted that that was lame, but what an absolute wonderful gift that would be. But you know, we as teachers do have the power to achieve the end. However, we would need the superpower to obliterate poverty, joblessness, have involved caring parents for every child, get rid of corporate greed, end drug dependency and other ills that plague our society, and particularly our urban centers. Every teacher worth their salt wants the best for their students. They stay up late and get up early, and often there aren't too many hours in between. Dark circles under my eye kind of speak to that. Family or anything else. Why? Because students are a puzzle that must be put together, and every puzzle is different and every piece is significant. Understanding the challenges that we face as educators, administrators, and yes, human beings. Why would you expect more from us while providing less support? Case in point, a progressive school administration would emphasize preparation for a future in the sciences. We sold one of our gems of our school system to a charter school, the Benjamin Banneker Center, and got rid of all the science coaches, all in the same year. How did that improve education, the education of our children? In what way did this move undergird the pedagogy of our educators? Following years were followed with the elimination of our literacy coaches and math coaches. Administrators are expected to do double the amount of work that they are laden with while teachers are expected to do more with less. Kind of like the Israelite people being expected to make more bricks without straw. Amen. We as teachers are human beings. We are not widgets, we are not machines, nor are our children. We are teachers charged with instilling the very values in our children that are being stripped from us strand by strand. And I think about that as we stand outside waiting to get inside, banging on the doors to get inside of a public meeting that is for us, for our children, while other groups of people are inside taking charge. Mind-boggling, mind-boggling. Stripped from us strand by strand as we focus more on test results and less on the whole child, as we wait for a contract while the powers that be receive raises, while we are threatened with working with more hours for less pay. Instead of waiting for the superheroes, we should concentrate on supporting and providing real resources for the mere hardworking and exhausted human beings.
Thank you, Ms.
that
Austin.
you have to work with.
Thank you very much. That ends public participation. I have said thank you to the audience for your patience, and I would also like to say thank you to the board members and Newark Public Schools staff, as this has been an extraordinary evening in terms of time and number of speakers. So I thank you for your indulgence, since this is the last board meeting of this year, and we did stretch our rules a bit and allow all speakers
Madam Chair.
to speak. Mr. Lewis, we're going to be moving on to old and new business.
Yes.
At this time. And Mr. Lewis, Ms. Davis-Spate had indicated that she wanted to speak, so may she speak and then you would speak next?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we move on to old and new business.
Thank you, Ms. Baskerville, Chairman Baskerville. I just wanted to just make a couple of statements. I'm not really speaking as a board member right now because I'm speaking as a parent. My son wanted to come to this board meeting tonight based on his principal being demoted at Abington Avenue School, and I really commend him because he spoke about this meeting all day long, and he wanted answers why. So the staff need to know why, the principal need to really have a good understanding, and the kids need to know why, because it's really a lot of confusion that's taking place at Abington Avenue School, and if it don't have to take place, it shouldn't take place. So my son DeAndre is someplace in the back, but I just want him to know that I'm speaking on his behalf because he cannot come to the mic, but I want him to know, and I want the principal to know that I fully support you and I have your back. Thank you.
Thank you. He's here now?
Yes, he just walked out someplace. Oh, right there.
Where is he?
In the front, right here, front row.
I'm sorry, I'm so
DeAndre.
sleepy. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your patience, and I hope you're very proud of your mom. Mr. Lewis?
Madam Chair, I just want to read a statement into the record. At this time, I would like to read the following statement into the record to voice my disapproval of the upcoming school closures. I'm opposed to the closings of our neighborhood schools. Closing neighborhood schools is harmful to our students in our neighborhoods. Parents and grandparents won't have the daily contact with the teachers, principals, and other staff such as crossing guards, security guards, and the children will know it. Closing neighborhood schools does not just take the school away from the day, but also takes away a safe place for our neighborhood children to play after school. Throughout history, some schools have been closed and others have been open, but what's happening in Newark today is different. This plan had been rushed through. It had forced us in the community. It had been forced on us, and the community never had been invited to the planning table. Not only was the community left out, but also this board, the elected representative of this community, was not at the planning table. I cannot imagine Newark having no Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary School. And what will the children do at Dayton Street, in the Dayton Street area, in their neighborhoods, when they return home from their so-called new school? I have made these same points for months, and so have many of the community members, but the school closings are still rushing forward. It feels like a float gate has been opened and our public neighborhood schools are being washed away. In the future, all proposals of closing schools must be brought before the board for approval, long before the budget is voted on. That way, the board will vote on the school closings first, and the budget should reflect what the board vote on. It is not fair to hide school closings in the budget. My suggestion is reasonable and necessary. It's reasonable for parents to be a part of the planning for the future of our children, and it's necessary that this board be at the planning table. This is our city and our children. We refuse to accept. We refuse to accept being isolated from this process. We demand our rightful place in the planning table. Respectfully submitted, Marquisa Quill Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Jeffries, was your hand up, Ms. Mathias, also? Yes. Okay, Mr. Jeffries and then Ms. Mathias.
I'm going to be brief.
Thank you.
I appreciate the passion of what we heard tonight. I think there are very, very many legitimate points that we heard from many people of the public. One thing I did want to say, though, however, and I say this as the descendant of Virginia slaves and of Virginia American slaves. In the transatlantic slave trade, about 85 million Africans were murdered to get about 15 million over to the United States. And when they got here, a form of slavery that was unique in the history of the world was imposed upon them. It was genetic, so that when children were born, they inherited the slavery of their parents, which was unlike how slavery had been practiced up to that point throughout the world. Folks were raped, folks were murdered for merely looking at folk the wrong way. This continued in the United States for about 244 years. It's one of the great crimes in humanity in the history of the world. We should never invoke that legacy unless we're really sure that we're applying it to circumstances that apply. We may have some very different views about co-location. We have a district that has space for about 55,000 kids. We only serve 37,000 kids, so we have a lot of space. People may oppose that. People may disagree with that. But the notion that we want to compare that to the slave trade is frankly ridiculous. It's offensive. It's a disrespect to those of us who are descendants of American slaves. And we need to be very careful with our rhetoric because we wonder why sometimes our young people resort to violent words, violent action that is disproportionate to the nature of their dispute. But when we adults model that sort of overblown, outrageous rhetoric, and folks have pictures of slave ships, you had folks who'd be thrown overboard simply for looking the wrong way. 85 million people were murdered to get 15 million folks over here, and it's frankly disrespectful to the legacy of anybody who cares about that tragedy to invoke that in the context of co-location. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. I'm sorry. Ms. Mathias, please don't yell out. Please do not yell out. This is old and new business. Please do not yell out. I'm sure that any
Mr.
board
Rowe.
member that you would like to speak to will make themselves available.
I'm sure he's very proud of you defending schools that have failed kids for many decades.
Okay, could we please not go back and
finished.
forth?
I'm
We
sorry.
have
I'm
other
sorry.
board members who
I'm
want to
sorry,
speak,
Madam
and the hour is very late. Ms. Matthias?
I apologize.
I want to read a statement, and then I just have a question for the administration that could be answered at a later time. As we have heard tonight from so many speakers, including our elected officials, there's a huge disconnect between this district and the community at large. The mission of this district and the priority of this board is ensuring that every child in Newark Public Schools, no matter their zip code, has access to an excellent education. The ambitious task before that the administration has undertaken is turning around our lowest performing schools. And while we support this endeavor, we know that best practices show that any successful turnaround strategies include a strong parental and community engagement piece. This community that has been so fractured, so disenfranchised, so deceived, so shortchanged deserves an opportunity to not only receive information in a timely and accurately manner, but to be truly engaged in the decision-making process. To that end, I would like to introduce for discussion in August several policies to this board, including a policy on co-location and school closing, policies for truly engaging the parents and community in the decision-making process. Furthermore, I think that this board should entertain a resolution to urge the SDA to move immediately on the constructions of our schools. And then lastly, my question is, what is the process for changing meeting locations after the calendar has been adopted?
Is there anyone who can answer Ms. Matthias' question at this time?
Well,
It's up to the chair.
She'd like to know what is the process for changing the meeting location?
Change it.
It just got to be 48 hours, and it had to come through the chair.
Okay.
Because we did that last year. We moved one of the meetings to Barringer to accommodate overflow. So as
Okay.
long as the public notice is provided, the board can
So it
do
would
that.
have to be, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Can I just make the recommendation that when we know we have issues that are of great community concern and we have such a large number of speakers, that we do not continue to block out the community and we take that into consideration?
Yes, thank you. If there's no other board member,
Madam Chair.
yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Kenny.
I'd like to first thank everybody for staying. You know, it's good to come in the beginning, but to stay throughout the entire evening is a wonderful experience. We're at board meeting number 3, and I requested a feasibility study and still haven't received one. At the last meeting, I also requested information regarding the demographics of the students going into the magnet schools. I thought we were going to get a presentation on that this evening. We haven't received one, so we know exactly where they're coming from in terms of the district, what they look like going inside the school buildings. And there was a comment that was made I wanted to address at the time. A student said, someone made a comment about diversity in the school, and the person retorted by saying, well, it's an academic school, they have to test to get in. To the young man's, I guess, opinion, it is an academic school. Every child has a right to go to the school. And if there's a demographic that we're not putting into that school building, we need to make sure that we do everything possible to make sure that the entire district is reflected in that school buildings. And if those numbers does not reflect where we are in the district, then we need to do something about it. And what happened under Christine Teller years ago when I was a student at Science High School, under Christine Teller, there was a concerted effort to make sure that people like me at Camden Middle, people who went to Newton Street, people who went to Cleveland, attended Science High School, and it was more than just a test that they used to make sure that those students got in. And also when we were in that school, it wasn't stigmatized. Let me say this, I made honor roll every year except for one semester, because of my handwriting. So, and when all the students got in, we were all judged the same way. We weren't stigmatized as being lower performing or we got in on the quota. We got in because we tested in, but we also got in because Christine Teller and that administration at that time made a concerted effort to make sure that the city was reflected in one of the best programs in the entire country here in the city of Newark. There's another thing I also want to talk about as well, is that I also agree with Shavar as well. We should never, you know my opinion, you should know my opinion about the co-location process in the district. I do agree with Shavar, we should never use slavery to depict anyone at all in our district. I think that was disrespectful, and I think that was disingenuous, especially on Juneteenth. A day that we got the word that, in Galveston, Texas, we were free, on June 19th, 1865, we're using signs, the same signs that we'll be offended if it was Hitler and Obama. We should be the same way offended when we have slave ships depicting a superintendent where we should be propping up. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to cut my nose to spite my face. She needs to be the best superintendent in the entire world because our kids are in the district, regardless. So we can't sit there and say that we want to make sure that she's destroyed if our kids are affected by it. That's just a ridiculous proposition. We need to work together, and I do agree on a number of different things. We need to have information in a timely manner. We need to make sure that we work together because tonight's meeting is a depiction of what's happening throughout the district where we have constant fights, charter versus public versus charters. It's a ridiculous proposition. We have a district where we need to make sure all our kids are serviced. But as a board member, my responsibility is to make sure that Newark Public Schools will always remain first, to make sure that we have resources for our buildings first, and to make sure that we don't give away our facilities in a way where we undermine our own children at all. So that's my primary responsibility, to make sure that we have our district fully feasible, we have resources for our district. And the other thing I wanted to also find out, we are planning to hire teachers going forward. I'm not sure how that's going to affect our deficit going forward. At some point, we need to institute a hiring freeze. We need to make sure that we have a number of people that we have in our EWP pool who have been out of the classroom for a certain amount of, for a year, to make sure they're prepared to go back into the classroom. And my hope is that that's the expectation that we have going forward, that we pull people out with the intentions of putting back in as opposed to hiring new teachers, creating an even larger deficit in our district.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. I just want to respond to one small part of what you were talking about, and this is just my understanding in reference to the feasibility study. It's my understanding, or at least the information that I got, that I think that we got, was that the last one was done 10 years ago, and that data is basically stale data at this point, and that another feasibility study would need to be done.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Is that the same thing?
It's not the same thing.
Is that not the same thing?
Because I think what we're talking about is, well, that's disparity. We're talking about feasibility.
Oh, okay.
What we're talking about pretty much is a snapshot of what 2012, 2013, 2013, 2014 will look like. Also, we made decisions doing co-locations last year. We should get an idea of what happened, how those kids performs, like the educational impact. Like, we need to know how those kids perform, because we've been moving kids throughout the district, and I keep using the word.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity. Not to cut you off. Thank you for the clarity. Point well taken. I would like at this time, and I'm going to do this because I think it's important and also timely, the Fathers Club of Weequahic High School and Mr. Tenero, the principal of Weequahic High School, have requested to name the newly renovated field house at Weequahic High School after a longtime coach, Bernie Adams. And they plan the dedication for the Weequahic Shabazz football game on Thanksgiving in November. So I would like, in support of their effort, I would like to entertain a motion in support of a resolution to be presented at the August Advisory Board meeting, and that the wording of that resolution would reflect support, the Advisory Board support for naming the field house at Weequahic High School after former coach Bernie Adams.
Can I support it? My former coach, and also...
you can make the motion.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to support that motion for my former coach and a proud gentleman.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Kenny, second by Ms. Matthias. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? That motion carries.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I've been here as long as you have. There's also another issue as well. I didn't know this evening until we found out that Abington Principal was being removed or relocated. I'm sure that there's other principals throughout the district that are being reassigned or whatever. If we can get an idea of who those individuals are, and I like to put on the record that I fully support Fred Chapman. I'm not sure. There's some rumors. I know there was a student that came up, and there were some people that talked to me outside of this meeting. Fully support Fred Chapman and everything he's done at Harriet Tubman. And if you haven't seen it, you please go by Harriet Tubman, and they have these slave underground railroad thing that they do with the entire building, and all these students participate, and it's a tradition that they started when I was a former student at Harriet Tubman and have kept going forward. So, and that's one of our blue ribbon schools, one of our proud jewels in the district, and accept all kids. So we can, I'd like to fully put on the record that I fully support Fred Chapman and any other principal who is able to maintain standards like an Abington principal in our district. I'd like to support those as well.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I want to first second everything Mr. Kenny just said about Abington and also about Mr. Chapman. Mr. Chapman, we had a few conversations. I know he's doing awesome work over at Harriet Tubman, and my former superintendent, who I fully supported for the permanent job, Ms. Deborah Terrell, supports him, and I believe in her, what she support. So I fully support Mr. Chapman. But also, Madam Chair, there have been meetings going on in this district, invite-only meetings with charter school parents and public school parents, and this board wasn't aware of these meetings. And then I actually approached one of the people who are responsible for gathering these meetings, and they asked me, "Do you invite me to your meetings?" Now I'm not going to put the person's name out there, but I just one is disrespectful to me as a board member for you to approach me like that. Secondly, you work for this district, so you answer to the superintendent, and you also act with respect to his board members. So I think, Madam Superintendent, you need to check this person and let them know that they need to respect authority and learn how to talk to people. Because any meeting that goes on in this district, we as board members should know about the meetings. I don't care if it's your meeting, who meeting it is. If it's a meeting going on in this district about moving this district forward or getting partnership between public schools and charter school parents, this board need to know about the meetings. I shouldn't have to find out about it. And the other thing is, if it's about bringing the public school parents and charter school parents together, it shouldn't be invite only. So that's one thing, Madam Chair, I want you to, and Madam Superintendent, to address. And also, I want us to look at fixing this speaker list as well. We need to fix this speaker list, and also board member colleague Matthias came up with a brilliant idea. I don't know why she ain't sitting her when she was talking, but it looked like we only offering our buildings to charter schools when we have other nonprofit organizations and other programs that we could put in our schools. We need to expand our vision and allow other people to try to rent our building who can't afford what they have out there in the market, but make afford our building and may bring great programs to save our children into our district. So we need to open up our eyes and broaden our vision and just not offer our buildings to charter schools, but allow everybody to come and try to get a piece of the pie.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'm sorry, last thing, Madam Chair. I was just hoping that with some of the concerns that the teachers were raising in regards to the discriminatory termination practices going on within the district, that the administration does look into it, and if they can report back to us the results of that by the August meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Matthias.
There are legal procedures we have to follow when we hear those complaints, and we do take them seriously.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second. All in favor of adjourn?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Good night.
In facts.